The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, changing everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood in the communication center of Earth's Capitol building, staring at the holographic display that showed symbols no human had ever seen before. The translation came through slowly, each word appearing in perfect English despite coming from somewhere beyond the stars. The Galactic Council summons the species known as humans to appear before the High Assembly. You will present yourselves within 30 standard days to complete the rite of submission. Failure to comply will result in immediate action. Lisa read the message 3 times before the weight of it hit her. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and apparently, they were expected to bow down to someone they had never met. Captain Jake Thompson received the call an hour later. He was working on engine repairs aboard the starship Terra's Pride when his communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Earth Command. The seasoned captain had seen action in the asteroid mining conflicts and the Mars Rebellion, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Pack your bags, Jake," came the voice of Admiral Chris Morgan. "You're taking our best people to meet some aliens who think we should kneel for them." Within days, Earth's finest minds were boarding Terra's Pride. Dr. Amanda Foster brought her team of xenobiologists, though they had never studied actual aliens before. Dr. Kevin Walsh loaded his scientific equipment, hoping to learn about alien technology. Most importantly, Ambassador Martinez came aboard with strict instructions from President Ryan Clark himself. "We go in peace," the president had told her during their final meeting, "but we go as equals. Humanity has never bowed to tyrants on Earth, and we will not start now among the stars." The journey to the council station took 2 weeks. During that time, Dr. Foster studied every piece of data they had received about the aliens. The council consisted of 12 different species, led by something called the Veltar. These crystal-like beings had supposedly ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. "Look at this," Amanda said to Jake as they reviewed the files. "Every species that has ever met the council has performed this rite of submission." They kneel down and offer tribute. "It seems like no one has ever said no." Jake frowned as he looked at the images of various alien species bowing before tall, glittering figures. What happens if someone refuses? "According to these records, no one ever has refused," Amanda replied quietly. The council station was massive beyond imagination. As Terra's Pride approached, the crew could see it was larger than Earth's moon. Ships from hundreds of different worlds docked at its many ports. Some vessels looked like living creatures, others appeared to be made of pure energy, and still others resembled floating cities. "My God," whispered Dr. Walsh as he stared out at the alien ships. "Look at all of them." The docking process was handled by machines that seemed to read their minds. Terra's Pride was guided to a platform without any human input. As the ship settled into place, Jake could see alien beings moving about the station through the windows. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others slithered or floated. A few seemed to be made of light itself. When the airlock opened, they were met by a group of tall, thin aliens with pale blue skin and 4 arms. These beings wore robes that seemed to shift color as they moved. "We are the Murdani," one of them said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like water flowing over rocks. "We will guide you to the council chamber. Please follow protocol." As they walked through the station's corridors, Lisa noticed something troubling. The other aliens they passed kept their heads down when the Murdani approached. Some actually stepped aside and bowed slightly. It reminded her of how people might act around a powerful noble in ancient times. The council chamber was enormous. 12 raised platforms surrounded a central area where petitioners were expected to stand. On each platform sat a representative of one of the ruling species. The Veltar occupied the highest platform, and Lisa could see why they were called crystal beings. They looked like living gemstones with light flowing through their translucent bodies. High Counselor Zex Nathi spoke without moving what might have been his mouth. His voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, reverberating through the chamber like thunder. "Humans of the 3rd planet of Sol system," the voice boomed. "You have been summoned to acknowledge the authority of the Galactic Council. You will now perform the rite of submission as all species have done before you." Lisa stepped forward to the center of the chamber. She could feel the eyes of hundreds of alien beings watching her. In the viewing galleries above, representatives from dozens of species waited to see what would happen. "We thank the Council for this meeting," Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Humanity comes in peace, seeking friendship and understanding with all species. The right, Zexnathi repeated, his crystalline form pulsing with brighter light. You will kneel and acknowledge our authority over your species. Lisa felt her heart racing, but her voice remained steady. We come as equals, hoping to join the galactic community as partners. A murmur ran through the chamber. On the viewing platforms, alien beings leaned forward. Some looked shocked, others seemed excited. In 3,000 years of council history, no species had ever spoken such words. You misunderstand, Zexnathi said, his voice growing colder. This is not a negotiation. This is submission. Kneel. Lisa looked around the chamber one more time. She saw the other council members watching intently. She saw the aliens in the galleries holding their breath. She thought about Earth, about humanity's long struggle for freedom and dignity. No, she said simply. The word echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. For several seconds, there was complete silence. Then chaos erupted. Alien voices rose in a dozen different languages, some sounding shocked, others excited, still others afraid. Zexanathi's crystalline body flared with angry light. What did you say? Lisa stood straighter, her voice growing stronger. I said no. Humanity will not kneel. We come in peace, but we bow to no one. The High Counselor's rage was visible as cracks of lightning ran through his crystal form. In 3,000 years, no species has dared refuse the right. You do not understand what you have done. We understand perfectly, Lisa replied. We choose to stand. As security forces moved to surround the human delegation, Lisa could see something unexpected happening in the viewing galleries. Some of the watching aliens were standing up straighter too. A few were even smiling, if their alien features could be called smiles. For the first time in millennia, someone had said no to the council, and that single word was about to change everything. The council chamber remained in chaos for nearly an hour, after Ambassador Martinez spoke her defiant words. High Counselor Zexnathi had to use his authority 3 times to restore order, his crystalline voice booming commands that made the walls shake. When silence finally returned, his anger filled the massive room like a poisonous cloud. Remove the humans to quarters, Zexnathi commanded the security forces. They have 7 standard days to reconsider their foolish words. As armed guards escorted Lisa and her team from the chamber, she caught glimpses of the alien spectators in the viewing galleries. Many looked stunned, but others wore expressions she could only describe as hopeful. A few even nodded slightly as she passed, though they quickly looked away when the guards noticed. The quarters assigned to the human delegation were comfortable but clearly designed as a prison. Force fields blocked the exits and surveillance devices watched their every move. Captain Thompson immediately began studying the technology, while Dr. Foster tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Did you see how some of those aliens reacted? Amanda asked as they gathered in the main room. I think some of them were actually happy we refused. Jake nodded grimly, which makes me wonder how many species are here against their will. Meanwhile, news of humanity's refusal was spreading throughout the station like wildfire. In the lower levels where service workers lived, aliens who had never spoken to each other began gathering in small groups. The Escobar maintenance crews stopped their work to whisper excitedly among themselves. The Mordun food preparers shared glances filled with meaning. On Earth, President Ryan Clark was dealing with his own crisis. The Council's ultimatum had arrived just hours after the confrontation, and its message was clear: submit or be destroyed. The President called an emergency meeting with his top advisors in the Situation Room, deep beneath the Capitol building. They're giving us 7 days, Clark said, reading from the alien message. 7 days to surrender our freedom, or they'll send their fleet to enforce submission. General Patricia Hayes, Earth's top military commander, spread tactical displays across the conference table. Our intelligence suggests they have over 10,000 warships. We have 63 combat vessels, most of them designed for system patrol rather than major warfare. The odds are not good, admitted Admiral Morgan via video link from the Fleet Command Station on Luna. But our people have always fought best when backed into a corner. Dr. Walsh, who had returned to Earth aboard a fast courier ship, presented his findings to the group. I managed to scan some of their technology while we were at the station. Their ships are powerful, but they're also old. Very old. I think they've been using the same basic designs for centuries. President Clark leaned back in his chair, considering their options. What about the project you've been working on? The adaptive shield system? Kevin's eyes lit up. It's not fully tested, but yes. The theory is sound. Our shields could learn to counter their weapons in real time. It might give us an edge. How long to retrofit the fleet? The president asked. 2 days, maybe 3 if we work around the clock, Kevin replied. General Hayes studied the tactical reports again. Even with better shields, we're still outnumbered massively. We need something else. Back on the council station, Lisa was discovering that their imprisonment was not as complete as it appeared. A maintenance worker entered their quarters late in the evening, a reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes. At first, Lisa thought he was just there to clean, but then he spoke in heavily accented English. Human female, the Escobar said quietly, glancing around nervously. My name is Tekvar. I bring message from my people. Lisa moved closer, keeping her voice low. What message? We hear what you say to council. First time in 300 years someone say no. My people, we remember when we were free, before council come to our world and make us slaves. How many others feel the same way? Lisa asked. Tekvar's eyes gleamed. More than council knows. Seskavar, Mordun, Zethkri, others. We all dream of freedom but never dare act. Until now. Over the following days, more secret visitors came to the human quarters. Each brought the same message. Their species had been conquered long ago and forced into servitude. The council maintained power through fear and overwhelming force, but many of the subjugated races still remembered what freedom felt like. Dr. Foster began documenting what she learned from these visits. The council isn't just a government, she told the others. It's an empire built on slavery. They conquer species and then use them as workers and soldiers. That explains the ship designs Kevin mentioned, Jake said. They don't need to innovate because they have unlimited forced labor to build whatever they want. On the 5th day, War Master Thexelis of the Siskavar made contact. Unlike the nervous maintenance workers, this alien military commander carried himself with obvious authority. His scales were darker than the others, marked with scars from old battles. Humans, he said without preamble. My fleet commanders are ready to act when your ships arrive. We have been planning rebellion for decades, waiting for the right moment. How many ships? Jake asked. 800 Escovar vessels, 300 Mordun fighters, and perhaps 200 others from smaller species. Not enough to defeat the council alone, but enough to tip the balance if your people fight as bravely as your ambassador speaks. Lisa felt her heart racing. You're willing to risk everything based on our refusal to kneel? Thexelis showed what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Sometimes one act of courage can inspire a galaxy. Your people have shown us that the council can be defied. Now we will show them that their empire can fall. Back on Earth, the final preparations were complete. Every human warship had been fitted with Dr. Walsh's adaptive shield technology. The crews had been briefed on what they were likely to face. President Clark made one last broadcast to the planet before the fleet departed. My fellow humans, he said, looking directly into the camera, we face a choice that will define our species for generations to come. We can submit to alien masters and spend eternity on our knees, or we can stand up for the principles that have always guided us. Freedom is not negotiable. Dignity is not for sale. Admiral Morgan led the fleet out from Luna orbit on the 6th day. 63 ships against 10,000 seemed impossible, but every human crew member knew they were fighting for more than just their own freedom. They were fighting for the right of all species to stand tall. As the human fleet approached the edge of Earth's solar system, they received one final message from the council station. High Counselor Zexnathi's voice carried across the void, cold and threatening. Your time has expired, humans. Submit now, or face destruction. Admiral Morgan's response was broadcast on all frequencies, heard by both human and alien ships throughout the system. This is Admiral Morgan of the Earth Defense Fleet. We reject your demands. We choose to stand. In the depths of space, thousands of ships began moving toward what would become the most important battle in galactic history. On one side, the massive council fleet that had maintained order through fear for millennia. On the other, a small group of humans who refused to bow, supported by alien allies who had finally found the courage to fight for their freedom. The war for galactic liberation was about to begin. The council fleet emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter like a swarm of metal locusts. Admiral Morgan watched from the bridge of his flagship as thousands of enemy vessels spread across the outer solar system. Each council ship dwarfed the largest human vessel, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets. "Count is confirmed," reported Communications Officer Tony Ramirez. 9,743 enemy vessels. They're moving into attack formation. Morgan studied the tactical display, noting how the alien ships moved with perfect coordination. 3,000 years of conquering had taught the Council how to overwhelm any opposition through sheer numbers and firepower. "Any word from our allies?" Morgan asked. "Negative, sir. The Escobar and Mordun fleets are maintaining radio silence as planned." The plan was simple in concept but dangerous in execution. The human fleet would engage the Council forces directly, drawing their attention and hopefully causing them to bunch together for easier targeting. Meanwhile, the alien rebel fleets would attack from unexpected directions, using their knowledge of Council tactics against them. Commander Nicole Price led the first wave of human fighters toward the asteroid belt. Her squadron of 12 small ships looked pathetic against the massive Council dreadnoughts. But size wasn't everything in space combat. "Remember," Nicole told her pilots over the comm, "we're faster and smarter. Use the asteroids for cover and don't stay in one place too long." The first shots of the war came from a Council heavy cruiser, massive beams of energy that could melt mountain ranges. But Nicole's fighters were already moving, darting between asteroids and using the debris field as a maze. The alien weapons designed for destroying large targets had trouble tracking the small, agile human craft. "That's one weakness," Nicole reported back to the fleet. "Their targeting systems aren't built for fighter-sized targets." Dr. Walsh watched from the bridge of Terra's Pride as his adaptive shield technology faced its first real test. A Council destroyer targeted their ship with a barrage of plasma cannons, the kind of weapons that had reduced entire worlds to ash. The first impacts made the ship shake, but the shields held. More importantly, they began to adapt. Each subsequent hit was absorbed more efficiently as the shield matrix learned to counter the specific energy patterns. "It's working," Kevin announced excitedly. "Shield efficiency is increasing with each hit. We're actually getting stronger the more they shoot us." Captain Thompson used this advantage to press closer to the enemy formation. Terra's Pride might be smaller than the Council ships, but her adaptive shields allowed her to survive in situations that would destroy a normal vessel. The real surprise came 30 minutes into the battle. Just as the Council fleet began to gain the upper hand through sheer numbers, space itself seemed to explode with new arrivals. Warmaster Thexalis led 800 Escobar warships out of hyperspace directly behind the Council battle line. These ships were smaller than their master's vessels, but they knew exactly where to strike. Decades of forced service had taught them every weakness in Council ship design. "For freedom," Thexalis roared over the open comm channels. "For all the worlds they have enslaved." The Siskovar ships moved like a pack of hunting wolves, focusing their fire on the Council ship's engine sections. They had maintained these very vessels for years and knew precisely where the critical systems were located. Minutes later, the Mordun fighter swarms arrived from another direction. 300 of their small, agile craft swarmed over the Council fleet like angry insects. Their ships were barely larger than human fighters, but they carried weapons specifically designed to cut through the Council's standard armor. High Counselor Zex Nathi watched from his flagship as his supposedly unbeatable fleet began taking serious damage. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. Enemy species were meant to surrender after seeing the Council's overwhelming power, not fight back with tactics and technology he had never encountered. "How are their shields adapting to our weapons?" he demanded from his tactical officers. "Unknown, High Counselor. Their technology appears to be learning from our attacks." Zex Nathi's crystalline form pulsed with angry light. "Then use different weapons. Cycle through every energy frequency we have." But the adaptive shields continued to evolve. Each new weapon type was met with an appropriate countermeasure. The human ships, originally vastly outgunned, were now surviving hits that should have vaporized them instantly. Commander Price led her fighters in a daring attack on a Council dreadnought. The massive ship was trying to target Admiral Morgan's flagship, but Nicole's squadron swooped in like hawks attacking an eagle. "Target the weapon arrays," she ordered her pilots. "Take out their big guns and they can't hurt our capital ships." The human fighters danced around the dreadnought's defensive fire, their small size and superior maneuverability, allowing them to get close enough to strike critical systems. Within minutes, the kilometer-long ship was drifting helplessly, its main weapons destroyed. Dr. Foster, monitoring communications from her station aboard Terra's Pride, began picking up something unexpected. The Council fleet was receiving messages from their homeworlds, and the news was not good for the crystalline overlords. "Captain," she called to Jake, "I'm intercepting reports from across the galaxy. Other species are rising up. The Zethkri have seized their home system. The Velnari are attacking Council outposts in the Outer Rim." Jake smiled grimly as he maneuvered his ship to support a damaged human cruiser. Word travels fast in space. Every species that ever dreamed of freedom is watching this battle. The fighting continued for 6 hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The Council still had superior numbers, but their losses were mounting. Worse for them, reports kept coming in of rebellions throughout their empire. Lieutenant Commander Tony Ramirez found himself in command of the destroyer Defiance after his captain was injured in the first hour of fighting. Despite being the youngest officer to command a capital ship in human history, Tony led his crew with skill that impressed even the alien allies. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy is pulling back to regroup." Tony studied the battle display. The Council fleet was indeed withdrawing, but not in retreat. They were forming a new formation, one designed to maximize their remaining firepower advantage. "They're going to try one massive push," he realized. "All ships prepare for heavy assault." High Counselor Zek Snathi gathered his remaining 7,000 ships into a tight formation. The humans and their rebel allies had fought better than anyone expected, but numbers would still tell in the end. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the human command ship," he ordered. "Destroy their leadership and the others will surrender." But as the Council fleet began its final attack, something unexpected happened. More ships began dropping out of hyperspace around the battle zone. Not Council reinforcements, but vessels from a dozen different species that had been waiting to see which way the battle would go. The crystalline overlords had ruled through fear for so long that they had forgotten a simple truth. Courage is contagious. When one species finds the strength to stand up, others remember that they too can fight. As the reinforcements joined the battle, Admiral Morgan realized that they were no longer fighting just for humanity's freedom. They were fighting for the liberation of an entire galaxy. "All ships," he broadcast on open channels, "press the attack. Today we end 3,000 years of tyranny." The battle was far from over, but for the first time since it began, Admiral Morgan believed they could actually win. The battle above Jupiter had been raging for 12 hours when the first confirmed reports reached the Council's homeworlds. High Counselor Zexnathi's supposedly unstoppable fleet was not just being resisted, it was being driven back by humans and their growing coalition of rebel species. On the industrial world of Keth Prima, the news sparked something that hadn't been seen in 3 centuries: hope. The Mordun workers who had labored in the Council's weapon factories for generations suddenly stopped their shifts. Factory supervisor Ralteth tried to force them back to work, but found himself facing thousands of angry aliens who had finally remembered what freedom looked like. "The humans refuse to bow," declared Vorgek, the eldest of the Mordun workers. "If they can stand against the Council, so can we." Within hours, every major industrial center in the galaxy was experiencing work stoppages. The Council's war machine, which had relied on slave labor for millennia, ground to a halt just when they needed it most. Captain Thompson received these reports while directing repairs to Terra's Pride. His ship had taken heavy damage during the battle, but Dr. Walsh's adaptive shields had saved them from destruction multiple times. "The entire galactic supply chain is collapsing," Jake told Admiral Morgan during their strategy meeting. "The Council can't build new ships or repair damaged ones because their workers are in rebellion." Morgan studied the tactical reports with satisfaction. "Then we need to keep the pressure on. Every day we keep fighting, more species will join us." The aquatic Murdani had been silent throughout the initial battle, their ships maintaining position, but not engaging either side. These water-breathing aliens had served as the Council's diplomatic corps for over 1,000 years, skilled negotiators who had convinced countless species to surrender without fighting. But now their leader, Fleet Singer Equineth, made a decision that shocked the galaxy. Her beautiful flowing voice echoed across all communication frequencies as she addressed both fleets. "For too long, the Murdani have been the voice of submission, convincing others to kneel before the Council. No more. The humans have shown us what courage looks like. Today we choose to swim with the tide of freedom. 2,000 Merdani vessels suddenly opened fire on their former masters. Their ships were not built for heavy combat, but they carried advanced communication and sensor technology that proved invaluable to the Rebel Alliance. Dr. Foster monitored these developments from her station aboard Terra's Pride, where she had been analyzing captured Council technology. What she discovered sent chills down her spine. "Captain," she called to Jake urgently, "I need to speak with Ambassador Martinez immediately." When Lisa arrived in the science lab, Amanda's face was pale with shock. "I've been studying the Council's historical records and something doesn't add up. According to their own files, the Veltar only appeared in the galaxy 3,000 years ago." "So?" Lisa asked, not understanding the significance. "The galactic government they claim to have founded has evidence of existing for over 10,000 years. The Veltar didn't create the Council, they conquered it." The implications hit Lisa like a physical blow. "You're saying they're imposters?" "Worse than that. I think they're parasites. Look at this data about their biology." Amanda brought up a holographic display showing Veltar physiology. "They don't reproduce like normal species. They spread by infecting other crystalline beings and converting them." Lisa stared at the evidence, her mind racing. "If we can prove this, broadcast it to the galaxy. Every species will know they've been enslaved by alien parasites pretending to be legitimate rulers." The breakthrough came during the second major battle. Fought in the asteroid fields between Mars and Jupiter, Lieutenant Commander Tony Ramirez had been promoted to full commander after his heroic actions in the first engagement, and now found himself leading a strike force against a Council supply depot. His ship, the Defiance, was accompanied by a mixed squadron of human, Skavar, and Mordon vessels. The mission was supposed to be a simple raid, but what they found changed everything. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the depot. This isn't just a supply station." Tony ordered a closer scan of the facility. What they discovered made his blood run cold. The depot wasn't storing supplies, it was processing them. Specifically, it was processing the crystalline remains of dead aliens and converting them into new Veltar. "My God," Tony whispered as he watched the horrific process through his ship's sensors. "They're not just conquering species. They're turning them into more of themselves." The evidence was transmitted immediately to Admiral Morgan and Ambassador Martinez. Within hours, the proof of the Veltar's true nature was being broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Species that had served the Council for centuries suddenly realized they had been working for the murderers of their ancestors. Even some of the more loyal Council member species began to question their allegiance. High Counselor Zexnathi watched his empire crumble from the bridge of his flagship. The revelation of Veltar parasitism had destroyed the last vestiges of legitimacy his government had possessed. Rebellions were erupting in every sector. "High Counselor," his communication officer reported nervously, "we're receiving surrender offers from 60% of our fleet. They're asking for amnesty in exchange for switching sides." Zexanathi's crystalline form pulsed with rage. "Traitors and cowards. Order all loyal ships to fall back to the core worlds. We will make our final stand there." But the retreat was chaotic and disorganized. Ship after ship abandoned the Council fleet as their crews learned the truth about their masters. The mighty armada that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was falling apart. Commander Nicole Price led her fighter squadron in pursuit of the fleeing Council ships. Her pilots had become legends during the battles, their skill and courage inspiring human and alien crews alike. "Don't let them escape," she told her squadron. "Every ship that reaches the core worlds is one more we'll have to fight later." The running battle continued for days, as the Council remnants fled toward their home territory. But they were not retreating to safety. They were running toward a trap. War Master Thexalis had been busy while the main battle raged. His Essecavar engineers had spent decades maintaining Council installations throughout the galaxy, and they knew exactly how to turn that knowledge into a weapon. "The core world's defensive grid relies on a central control station," he explained to Admiral Morgan during their planning session. "If we can destroy that station, their entire planetary defense network will collapse." "How do we reach it?" Morgan asked. "It'll be heavily defended." Thexalis showed what passed for a Skavar smile. "We built it. We know exactly where the weak points are. As the Council remnants approached their home systems, they found something they hadn't expected. The defensive installations they had relied on for protection were now working against them. Automated defense platforms, reprogrammed by SSK-VAR technicians, opened fire on Council ships. Dr. Walsh monitored the technical aspects of the rebellion from Earth, where he was coordinating with rebel engineers across the galaxy. "It's beautiful," he told President Clark during their daily briefing. "They're using the Council's own technology against them. How long before we can end this?" the President asked. Kevin considered the question carefully. The Council still controls about 20% of their original fleet, concentrated around their core systems. But they're surrounded, cut off from supplies, and their own people are turning against them. "Then it's time to finish this," Clark decided. "Send word to Admiral Morgan. Humanity will stand with our allies until the last Council ship surrenders or is destroyed." As news of the impending final battle spread throughout the galaxy, something remarkable happened. Species that had never fought before took up arms. Scientists became soldiers, farmers became fighters, and slaves became liberators. The age of submission was ending, and a new era of freedom was about to begin. But first, the galaxy had to survive one last desperate battle against an enemy that had nothing left to lose. The final battle began at the edge of the Veltar home system, where High Counselor Zex Nathi had gathered the last 2,000 ships loyal to the Council. These vessels surrounded the crystalline homeworld like a protective shell, their weapons pointed outward at the approaching Liberation fleet. Admiral Morgan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as thousands of Allied ships dropped out of hyperspace around him. Human vessels flew alongside SSK-VAR cruisers, Mordan fighters, and ships from dozens of other species. What had started as humanity's refusal to bow had become the galaxy's fight for freedom. "Final count, Admiral," reported his tactical officer. 8,437 Allied vessels. "We outnumber them 4-1. Morgan nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Don't underestimate them. Cornered animals fight the hardest." President Clark arrived aboard the command ship New Horizon just as the battle preparations were completed. The aging leader had insisted on witnessing this historic moment personally, despite the obvious dangers. "Mr. President," Morgan said as Clark joined him on the bridge, "are you sure you want to be here? This could get very dangerous." Clark looked out at the massive fleet surrounding them. "Admiral, this all started because one of our people refused to kneel. I wouldn't miss the ending for anything." The battle opened with a coordinated strike by Commander Nicole Price's expanded fighter wing. Now numbering over 3,000 small craft from various species, her pilots swept toward the Council defense line like a swarm of metallic insects. "Remember," Nicole told her diverse group of pilots over the comm, "we're not just fighting for our own freedom today. We're fighting for every species that was ever forced to bow." The Council ships responded with desperate fury. Their weapons, designed to destroy planets, filled space with deadly energy. But the Allied fighters were too numerous and too agile. For every fighter destroyed, 2 more slipped through the defensive fire. Captain Thompson led Terra's Pride in a direct assault on one of the Council's heavy battleships. His crew had become experts at using their adaptive shields, and the alien vessel's weapons proved increasingly ineffective as the shield matrix learned to counter each attack. "Their technology hasn't changed in centuries," Jake told his crew as they closed in for the kill. "But ours gets better every day." Dr. Walsh's greatest creation was proving its worth throughout the fleet. Human ships that should have been destroyed within minutes were not only surviving but growing stronger. The adaptive shields were sharing data between vessels, creating a fleet-wide defense network that became more effective with each passing hour. Deep within the Veltar homeworld, something ancient and evil watched the battle with growing desperation. The Veltar were not just a species. They were a collective consciousness that had spread across the galaxy like a disease, consuming other crystalline beings and adding their knowledge to its own. High Counselor Zex Nathi was merely the current voice of this collective, and now that voice was screaming with rage as 3,000 years of dominance crumbled around them. "All ships, ramming speed," Zex Nathi ordered his remaining vessels. "If we cannot rule, then we will take as many of them with us as possible." But even this desperate tactic failed. War Master Thexalis had anticipated it. His SSK-VAR vessels moved to intercept the suicide attacks, their crews willing to sacrifice themselves to save their allies. "For our children who will grow up free," Thexalis roared as his flagship rammed into a Council dreadnought. both ships disappearing in a massive explosion. The sacrifice was not in vain. The Council's ramming attack was blunted, and their remaining ships were quickly overwhelmed by the combined Allied fleet. Dr. Foster monitored communications throughout the battle, watching as the last pieces of the Council's empire collapsed. "Jake," she called to the captain, "I'm receiving surrender messages from Council installations throughout the galaxy. It's over everywhere except here." The end came suddenly. A massive explosion erupted from the Veltar homeworld as the collective consciousness that had ruled for millennia finally died. The remaining Council ships, cut off from their controlling intelligence, simply stopped fighting. Commander Tony Ramirez was among the first to board a surrendering Council vessel. What he found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. Alien crew members who had been controlled like puppets, now freed but confused about their own identities. "They've been slaves in their own minds," he reported back to the fleet. The Veltar didn't just conquer their bodies, they took over their thoughts too. In the aftermath of the battle, representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the ruins of the Council chamber. The massive station had been converted into a meeting place for the new galactic government. But this time there would be no raised platforms or submission rituals. Ambassador Martinez stood in the center of the chamber, but not as a conqueror or ruler. She had been elected as the first speaker of the free worlds, a position that carried responsibility but not authority over other species. "Today marks the end of an age of darkness," Lisa said to the assembled delegates. "For 3,000 years this galaxy knew only submission and fear. That age is over. The new charter was simple but revolutionary. Every species would govern itself according to its own values and customs. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation and compromise, not force. Most importantly, no being would ever again be required to bow before another." President Clark witnessed the signing ceremony from the gallery, tears in his eyes as he watched humanity's simple refusal to kneel transform into galactic liberation. Beside him sat War Master Thexalis, who had survived his ramming attack thanks to an emergency evacuation pod. "Your people started something beautiful," the Esescavar warrior said to Clark. "One word, no, and everything changed." The celebration continued for days as liberated species throughout the galaxy declared their independence. Former slaves became citizens, soldiers became peacekeepers, and the instruments of oppression were converted into tools of cooperation. Dr. Walsh found himself in high demand as species after species requested help adapting their technology for peaceful purposes. The adaptive shield technology that had saved humanity in battle was being modified to protect civilian ships and space stations. "It's funny," Kevin told Amanda as they worked on converting a former Council weapons platform into a research station. "We created this technology for war, but it might be more valuable for peace." Captain Thompson was offered command of the new Galactic Patrol Fleet, but he declined. "I'm the explorer, not a policeman," he told Admiral Morgan. "There's a whole galaxy out there that we're finally free to discover." The Terra's Pride became the flagship of the first peaceful exploration fleet in galactic history, carrying scientists and diplomats instead of soldiers and weapons. Commander Nicole Price established the Galactic Flight Academy, where pilots from dozens of species learned to fly together. Her first class included humans, Sescavar, Mordani, and even former Council species who wanted to help build the new order. "Flying isn't about being the best," she told her diverse students. "It's about working together to reach places none of us could get to alone." As the first year of the new era drew to a close, Ambassador Martinez made her final report as Speaker of the Free Worlds. The position rotated annually between species, ensuring that no single race could dominate the others. 1 year ago, humanity was summoned to bow before alien masters, she said in her address to the Galactic Assembly. "We refused, and that refusal became a revolution. But our greatest victory wasn't winning the war. It was proving that free beings can choose to work together instead of being forced to serve." The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for all those who had died fighting for freedom, followed by a celebration that could be seen from orbit. Fireworks from a dozen different worlds painted the night sky in colors that no single species could have imagined alone. In the years that followed, children from hundreds of worlds would learn the story of the humans who refused to bow. They would learn how one small act of defiance inspired an entire galaxy to stand up for freedom. But perhaps the most important lesson was simpler than that. Sometimes the most powerful word in any language is no, especially when spoken by someone who refuses to kneel. The age of submission was over. The age of freedom had begun, and it all started with 5 simple words. We come in peace, but we bow to no one.